The bell above Stellar Gate Academy's main corridor chimed 3 times, the end of the xenobiology lecture. Students poured into the hallway. Tall Vitheri with their bioluminescent fin crests, stocky Grommet with their 4 arms folded in post-class exhaustion, and 2 humans, small and pale and utterly unremarkable by galactic standards. Mira tucked her datapad under one arm and looked up at Ethan with those flat, forward-facing predator eyes that still made the Vitheri freshman flinch. "You heard what Professor was said about the Keth migration corridor?" she asked, pulling her braid over one shoulder. Ethan, taller than Mira by half a head, broader in the jaw, carrying 3 cracked ribs that he hadn't reported to the medical bay because they were already healing, shrugged. "Yeah," said, "it's protected space. No hunting, no harvesting. Right." Myra's voice carried no particular emotion. That, Ethan had learned after 4 years on this station, was when she was paying the most attention. Outside the Academy's East Wing loading dock, 3 ships sat in unauthorized berths. They were not student vessels. The leader called himself New York. He was Threxian, 7 feet of keratin-plated ambition with compound eyes and a personal trophy wall that spanned an entire orbital locker. Beside him stood Dai, a Grommet mercenary with a burn scar across 2 of his 4 palms, and Hai, a wire-thin Vitheri whose fin crest had been surgically removed to prevent emotional tells. Behind them, loading equipment into magnetic crates, were Wa and Me, hired hands with no tribal allegiance and cheaper rates. They had come for the Keth eggs. 43 fertilized clutches, currently incubating in the warm hull shadow of the Academy's eastern thermal vents. Worth more than most colonies earned in a decade. And there was no enforcement presence within 3 relay hours. New York had done his research. This was a school. Students. Academics. 2 of them were even human, which, he had checked, were a Class 4 biological designation. Soft atmospheric worlders. Short-lived. Fragile. He had not looked up which world. Mira heard the cargo clamps before she saw the ships. Her ears, evolved over 10,000 generations to catch the snap of a twig on a forest floor, the scrape of a boot on wet stone, the low-pressure click of a firearm cycling, processed the sound before conscious thought did. She put one hand on Ethan's elbow. He stopped immediately. "Loading dock," she said. He tilted his head. Listened. Humans had poor echolocation by galactic standards. By Earth standards, both of them had been hunting since they were children. Mira in the boreal forests of northern Canada, Ethan in the high-altitude scrubland of Patagonia. They did not need galactic standards. 5 signatures, Ethan said quietly. "One's Threxian. The crate sounds. That's active refrigeration. They're taking something live. The Keth eggs." Myra's jaw set. She pulled out her datapad and sent a single encoded ping to station security 3 relay hours away. Then she put the datapad in her bag. "They'll be gone before anyone arrives," Ethan said. "Yes," Mira agreed. Neither of them suggested waiting. What the galactic community understood about humans, academically, was this: they were from a high-gravity, high-radiation, biologically hostile Deathworld. They had anomalously dense bone structure. Their pain tolerance registered as a processing defect in most neural scanners. They had not had natural predators for approximately 10,000 years, which had made them worse. They had begun predating each other, which had compressed 40 millennia of strategic cognition into an evolutionary eye blink. What New York understood about humans, practically, was nothing. The first indication was the lighting. The loading dock went dark. Not a power failure, selective. The emergency band stayed on. The work floods died. In the sudden amber half-dark, High spun and fired a suppression burst at the doorway. Nothing there. Mira was already behind him. She had gone through the ventilation access panel in the east corridor wall, navigated by touch through 12 meters of ductwork, and dropped through the ceiling maintenance hatch while High was still turning. One precise strike. Ulnar bone against the nerve cluster beneath of Vitheri's fin socket, a location Mira had looked up during her second week of xenobiology because of course she had, and High folded. From the far end of the dock, a shape moved fast and low through the amber dark. Dai raised all 4 arms and fired. He had excellent reflexes. He hit 3 different points in the space where the shape had been. He did not account for the fact that Ethan had rolled under the cargo sledge, was now behind him, and had borrowed a lesson from the Patagonian deer hunters of his grandmother's village. If you cannot outrun it, make it turn. He made die turn. Then he made die stop turning. Me went for the ship. Mira caught him at the ramp. What threw a thermal disruptor? Ethan caught it, burned his hand, did not mention this, and threw it into the refrigeration crate, where it triggered the safety lock and sealed 200,000 credits of stolen eggs safely inside until authorities arrived. New York was the last. He stood in the center of the dock, plate armor bristling, 7 feet of apex predator by the standards of 4 different star systems, and looked at the 2 small bipeds standing across from him in the amber emergency light. Mira had blood on her sleeve, not hers. Ethan was holding his burned hand against his side as though it was merely inconvenient. Both of them were breathing hard, but controlled, the deep rhythmic pattern of organisms that had learned to regulate adrenaline as a survival tool rather than an emergency response. You, New York said, his translator producing the words with a click of disbelief, are students. We're xenobiology students, Ethan said, which means we know a lot about life. Mira tilted her head, that flat, forward-facing predator stare. And how to end it. New York had hunted on 11 worlds. He had faced Grommet berserkers and Vitheri assassins, and once, memorably, a creature on Sector 9 that had no name in any catalog. He had never felt prey before. The sensation was educational. Station security arrived 2 hours and 40 minutes later. They found 5 individuals in secured restraints, 1 Threxian, 1 Grommet, 2 unaffiliated, and 1 Vitheri who would require 3 weeks of neural regeneration therapy. The Keth eggs were intact. The refrigeration crate had not been breached. There was no surveillance footage. The loading dock cameras had suffered what the incident report described as coincidental simultaneous failure. The dock had been scrubbed, casings removed, every physical trace accounted for. The lead investigator, a Grommet named Joe, walked the scene 3 times and found nothing that required explanation, only results. She asked the academy administrator if any students had been in the area. The administrator checked the logs. 2 students had badged out of the East Wing at 1,703 hours and back into the residential block at 1849 hours. Human students, the administrator added. Quite quiet. Very good grades in xenobiology. Joe looked at the dock, at the 5 restrained hunters, at the perfectly locked crate. She wrote no witnesses in her report. Then she wrote, "Do not send human students to a Deathworld for field study. They appear to have brought the Deathworld with them." She filed it, flagged it educational, and went home. In the residential block, Mira wrapped Ethan's burned hand with standard-issue med gel and did not ask if it hurt, because she already knew the answer, and they both knew he wouldn't say yes anyway. "Good class today," Ethan said. Mira considered this. Was lecture on Keth migratory patterns was genuinely interesting. Yeah. He flexed his fingers experimentally. Glad we retained the information. Outside the viewport, the stars held still and quiet, and the Keth eggs incubated undisturbed in their sealed crate, waiting for someone worthy to return them to the warm dark of the thermal vents. They would be home by morning. Humanity, Class 4 biological designation. Soft atmospheric worlders. Short-lived. Fragile. Please update your records.